Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Austin Elling, Marketing Manager here at Metalcraft. We're going to get started with the webinar here in just another minute or two. We'll allow for those who are coming on right at 1 o'clock, just a second to get signed in and participate in the webinar. So we'll get going here in about another 90 seconds or so. Okay, it looks like we've kind of slowed down on individuals coming in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Austin Elling. I'm Marketing Manager for Metalcraft. We are a tag and label manufacturer located in Iowa. And today we're going to have a presentation given by Julia Dietz, our VP of Marketing and Customer Experience. Okay. And so Julia will be leading the presentation today. If you didn't receive a link for whatever reason, we'll try to get one sent out to you. But we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. A couple of just of things to note. If you have a question, feel free to use the chat or the question and answer function down below, and we'll be looking at those throughout the presentation. And as they come up, we'll try to answer those. I'll be kind of moderating that on our side and having Julia answer those. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia, and we'll start on the webinar of RFID for vehicles, see how passive RFID is changing automotive security, payment, and access control. Go ahead, Julia.
Thanks, Austin. And are you able to go ahead and start my video?
I will. You should.
Wait, no, I don't need to. Can you see my presentation?
Yep, I can see your presentation. Who can start?
I don't need video. I'm sorry.
Nope, I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. Well, depending upon where you are, good morning, good afternoon. As Austin said, my name is Julia Dietz. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Customer Experience here at Metalcraft. And I'm going to talk to you today about RFID for vehicles. Metalcraft has been in the RFID business now for, in some way, shape, or form, for going on 20 years. So we do have a lot of experience in this area. And really, RFID is what kind of got us into the vehicle market. And it's been a great application and a great industry for us. And I'm going to share a lot of that information with you today. So what we're going to cover, I'm going to talk about 3 primary applications for RFID with vehicles. I'm sure there's a lot more, but this is primarily what we see. RFID vehicle tag options. There's quite a few of them, but I'm going to narrow it down to the ones that we focus on. And again, Austin had said passive RFID, and Metalcraft only does passive RFID, so I won't be talking about any active RFID tags. And then some advancement in RFID tag security, specifically in access control or vehicular RFID applications. There has been a lot of need for tag security. because people like to try to move the tags from one vehicle to another. And so we've tried to develop different ways to help stop that. And then we're going to be looking at an RFID integrator, whether one would be needed for an application or not. And then how to identify the right RFID tag for an application. We're going to be talking about tag qualification. And then the pitfalls and gotcha to RFID implementation. And then I have 3 different case studies that have to deal with RFID in different vehicle applications to share with you. One is about a RFID in a gated community. One is about a car wash, and one is about using RFID at a car rental place. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. 3 primary applications for RFID with vehicles. The first one that really we see a lot of is access control. And access control, you know, really how we define that is just that. It is controlling access to give authorized access to a specific area. And we see a lot with parking and parking, you know, it can be with schools and any level of school. It can be with universities. It can be with, you know, private schools. It can be with medical schools. It just any type of school that they want to control the parking access. Events, you know, concerts or any other type of festival where they want to, where people have paid to be able to get access into that event. Public parking, you know, specifically in urban areas, you know, you see more of those popping up. Corporate parking, again, where the company has paid to be able to have access to specific parking areas and then allows their employees to be able to park there. And then, you know, apartment complexes or, you know, condos, similar thing, you know, where it's going to control who is able to get in and out of a specific area. Gated communities is very similar, frankly, to parking access, but it's, you know, it's not just the lot, it's actually the entire community. And you can have not just the RFID reading at the gate, you could actually have it be at different places within the community if you wanted to track movement throughout. That would just be kind of up to how the system is set up. So that's just a little bit about access control. We could actually have a whole separate webinar on access control if we wanted to, but that's just kind of a little bit about that. Vehicle identification is another one. And really what I'm talking about there is that you're identifying the vehicle by a specific number. You know, you would associate that vehicle to whatever number, you know, you programmed the tag for, and then you're identifying information about that car. So, and I'm going to talk about this as we get further on and talk about the case studies, but car washes use this information to be able to track how many times the car has been through the wash if they've paid for an unlimited subscription. And then tollways, kind of the same thing. So they're tracking payment about that. So again, that's vehicle identification. And then vehicle tracking. Vehicle tracking and vehicle identification are kind of synonymous with each other, but the way that I've sort of divided them up here is that vehicle tracking, you're really looking at kind of tracking the location of the car. And sometimes this is used in conjunction with GPS, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm specifically talking about applications that we've done where it's been used, RFID has just been used by itself. And we have examples, and I'm going to give the case study later, where it has just been used by itself with like the car dealership, where they're using it to track inventory of the car. So obviously with car dealerships, the cars are the assets and they have to take inventory of them. So they're using the RFID tag in order to be able to do that. a work in process, other than actually manufacturing the car, which is a whole nother thing. But as you're refurbishing a car, in order to be able to put it out onto the dealership lot, that could be considered a vehicle tracking work in process application as well. So that's another opportunity. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the RFID vehicle tag options that we have. And the first one, and this was the one that kind of started it all, was just the RFID windshield tag. And I've got under there that we have an internal or an external mount. So an internal mount is exactly what it says. And I've put this one here. Austin, when I do this, you can see my my cursor, right?
Yep.
Okay, to make sure. This illustration right here does a good job of showing the different layers of a windshield tag. And this is an internal mount because it is adhered to the inside of the windshield. So if we go over the different layers here, this is actually one of the liners, but on the inside of the liner there is actually the adhesive that will stick this tag to the inside of the windshield so that the barcode faces out and is protected by the glass. Okay, so that is what is meant by an internal windshield tag. Then you see you've got the printing, and then you've got the inlay there, and then you've got the other side of the tag, which the flip side of this would be, we call it driver facing because that is what the driver would see. That's the side of the tag that the driver would see. So then the external mount is, you could actually have the exact same tag here, except for the attachment adhesive, what we call, would actually be on the other side of this layer right here instead of this layer. Then we've got the destructible RFID windshield tag, which is actually this sample down here. Oops, sorry, got click happy. I'll just leave it. And this is a destructible windshield tag. It's actually an internal mount destructible tag. And if you were to try to remove part of it, it is made out of destructible material, and it would chunk off. So it would destruct, and it would basically kill the tag by reducing the read range down to inches instead of feet. Next we have, and you can have that be internal or external mount as well. And as we discuss finding the appropriate RFID tag, I'll discuss why you would want to have an internal tag versus an external mount tag. The next one we have is an on-site printable windshield tag, and that's actually this one up here. And this tag is actually an internal mount tag because of where the adhesive is at on the tag. And it's actually around here. And this information right here is, is obviously what goes through the thermal transfer printer. So, and when we discuss, finding the right tag for your application, we'll discuss why an on-site printable tag might be the right option to go with. The DuraDestruct tag. Now, I don't know if anybody has seen the information that we've been putting out over the last 6 weeks or so about the DuraDestruct tag that Metalcraft has developed. But this is another way to have a destructible tag. It destructs in a different way than the destructible tags up here that we talked about. The standard destructible tag down here destructs because of the material. The DuraDestruct tag destructs because of the construction. And what I mean by that, and again, I will discuss it a little bit later when we're talking about what tag is the appropriate one for your application, is that it truly destructs the chip of the tag in the way that you remove it. Whereas here, the tag technically is still operable. Down here, the tag is not with DuraDestruct. The headlamp tags. Now, headlamp tags, I don't have a picture of those, but headlamp tags are basically, if you think of like a windshield tag right here, but it's clear construction. So you actually can see the inlay. Reasons why you might use a headlamp tag versus a windshield tag is that sometimes either the driver does not want to have something on their windshield, or you might be in a state where they don't allow that. So a headlamp tag is another way to be able to have, vehicle tracking or access control applications without having something having an obstruction on your windshield. Side view mirror tags is another option. Similar to the headlamp tags, the side view mirror tag would go underneath your side view mirror. So external to the car, underneath your side view mirror. And you just have to be very aware of your reader orientation when using side view mirror tags, but it is another option. Unlike the headlamp tags, which are clear construction, the side view mirror tags can actually be printed, flood coat printed to match the color of the paint on your car. And then the last ones here are rear view mirror hang tags. And a couple of the options are shown over here. Now, and here's, you can kind of see what the construction of them is and how the RFID inlay is encapsulated within the hang tag construction. They can hang vertically or horizontally. These two hang vertically. I don't have a picture showing of one hanging horizontally, but these are for more temporary types of vehicle applications. So I already alluded to some of these, but I wanted to discuss more in depth some RFID tag security advancements. One that I haven't discussed yet are security slits. And basically these are strategically placed slits that aid in the destruction of the tag, which then helps to minimize read range. And these tags over here are actually the destructible ones, which we will talk about, but I'll try to illustrate, where some of these security slits would be placed. How we do it at Metalcraft is that they're diagonally cut slits made into the die that are basically cut this way, so that once somebody tries to pick off the tag and they catch one of those slits that actually also go into the inlay, that it will tear the tag apart. And then I have that these are the slits can be used with an exterior mount and polyester material because it will withstand UV exposure better. And polyester is more of a UV resistant material. However, because it is a stronger material, it is harder to tear. So it's like you have to figure out whether or not you want it to be more destructible or whether or not you want it to be more UV resistant, and then just kind of figure out the best way to go from there. Destructible materials, we talked about this a little bit more on the previous slide. It definitely aids in the tag's destruction. They are typically, we recommend that they're used on an interior mount version because of the UV exposure. They're great in destruction, but not so good for UV exposure. And then if we want to help in the UV exposure, we reinforce the strength of the material, making it less destructible. So that's why we recommend it for an interior mount tag. Now, the best way to get a security tag this way is to combine the security slits with the destructible material, and then you've definitely got a winner there. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about a little bit more here was just our DuraDestruct tag a little bit more, where the destructibility of the tag is really within the tag's construction. So there's two levels of destruction. First, what you do is you actually you remove the first level of this tag, which takes your read range from 20 plus feet on glass to inches. And then there's actually that leaves the chip. And then if you try to, that leaves the inlay that has the chip. And then if you try to remove that in order to be able to combine the two and move it to another vehicle, it actually destroys the chip. So you've got your materials with your destructible materials, and then your security slits, and then you can also do it with your construction like DuraDestruct.
Julia, before you move on, we just had a good note from Michael chatted in when you were talking about the different types of tags and the different types of kinds that you could have, whether it be windshield or headlamp or side view mirror. He mentioned that some states have specific regulations for tags on headlamps. He said, for example, Virginia doesn't allow them. So that's just a good note that if you're planning a project and you were thinking about doing that type of application, that there are regulations out there that you just want to make sure that you know what can and what cannot be placed where.
Yes, thank you. That is a good note. I am familiar with some of the regulations. Like I know that some in some of the states out east, they're not allowed to have a windshield tag that's a certain size. But I wasn't aware about some of the headlamp ones, but that doesn't surprise me. So that's always good to note and to just kind of have in the back of your mind. So thank you for that. And then how to determine whether or not you need an RFID integrator. These are, regardless of the application, these are good questions to ask. When I was putting this presentation together, I adapted it to access control, but it's still a lot of the same information because a lot of it still applies. So first of all, one of the things that you need to ask is really, what is the level of expertise with the end user? So if you are the end user, what level of expertise do you have with RFID? Do you have enough manpower to be able to develop this system yourself and then be able to train others to use it? And is that going to be worth it? Will you achieve your ROI objectives? Do you have the knowledge of the industry? Is the application even feasible? Or is it something that just is not realistic right now? And then what's the experience with providers? So, sometimes one of the values that integrators provide is just that they have the connections. They have the connections with, the hardware providers if they themselves do not provide them. They also have connections with very good converting partners, that will help be able to put that overall system together for you and know that it's going to work. And additional added values of integrators are the services that they provide, to be able to take your vision and make it a reality. And then knowledge of a specific industry or application. So even, we could just be talking about access control or, different RFID, vehicular types of applications, but even more specific than that, we could just be talking about integrators that have specific niches within the parking industry, or specific niches within the car washing industry. It can be as specific as that. Metalcraft has excellent integrators in all of these areas, and we can definitely say that there's a value in working with integrators that have such great knowledge of that industry, of their specific industry. Testing services. And then, like I had mentioned before, put a plug-in for the converters, partnerships with converters, and involvement in the tag development. You know, the sooner that you can get a converter involved in the process, the better it is to ensure that it's going to be a seamless transaction. Okay, so I talked about this a little bit before, just during the slide where I was talking about different RFID tag options. So the process for identifying proper RFID tag selection. And I just wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the specific questions about Metalcraft's DART qualification process. If any of you out there have worked with Metalcraft on any application, you know that we ask a lot of questions, and that's because we really want to know everything that we can about your application so that we can ensure that we are recommending the right product so that so that you can get the results that you want and that you need. So we have coined our qualification process the DART qualification process, which stands for defining your objective, asking questions, recommending the product, and then testing samples. So just to kind of walk you through that, defining the objective. So we really want to know, what do you want the expected outcome to be? What do you hope to accomplish? And do you have a target ROI? The last one here, target ROI, is very important when it comes to RFID, just because RFID is a more expensive technology to implement than, say, barcode. So these are some of the questions that we would ask to help give us an idea of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Then we get into our whole slew of questions, and I'll just kind of go over them and explain why it is that we would ask some of these questions. So first of all, we want to know if it's active or passive, because again, we don't do active. And if you are interested in passive, active, we want to know why, because there's certain advantages to doing it, but there's also certain disadvantages to doing active. And then knowing the frequency, again, there's advantages and disadvantages to different frequencies. The application surface, obviously, this is going to help us greatly sort of point us in the right direction in terms of where we need to go with the tag selection. And if we're looking at, if you're looking even on a car, if you're looking at putting it on metal, let's say that you want to put it, we've had people wanting to put them on the license plate. So right away, we'd have to go to a metal mount tag. So that may change, what the ROI is going to be, just because those tags are going to typically be more expensive. Glass, even if you just say glass, we're still going to want to know more about that, just because not all glass is the same, which is, what I'm going to go into a little bit later. So just knowing as much as we can about the application surface. Expected lifetime, I kind of alluded to this a little bit before in terms of the UV factor, whether or not it's going to be outside the car or inside the car, that will definitely affect, how long it's going to last, whether or not it's adhered to the inside or the outside of the windshield. So that's why I have combined it with the environmental factors, which are actually the next set of questions that you would ask.
Julia?
So, yes.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions come in, so I just stop you real quick so we can get those answered. The first one, Michael just commented, I think it's a good comment. He said, do you mind basically saying, could you explain what a converter is? So for those who are on the webinar here that maybe don't know that specific term, could you define what a converter is?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes we kind of get off on assuming that people understand different terminology. A converter is basically a manufacturer, such as ourselves, such as Metalcraft, that take the raw materials. In this case, for an RFID tag, it would be the printed copy that we print on. So we provide a pre-printed tag for the most part. We take the RFID inlay, and then the adhesive. And we take all of those materials and we convert or manufacture the final tag. We also program it. So basically we have, we either work with the end user or we work with integrators to be able to take the information, take the, the qualifying information that we're getting here during this process to identify the right tag and then what they want programmed to it, and take that and convert it or provide it to them, manufacture it for them.
Yep, great. Then a couple other questions. One from David asked, for the on-site printable type tags, which print technology could be used? He asked if thermal transfer or inkjet laser if it's exposed to adhesive, can it cause issues with print head and rollers, etc.?
Sure. We recommend thermal transfer. We have not done a lot of, and we can actually recommend a specific printer to use. We've had our best success with the SATO CL4NX printer. And yes, we actually, you have to know what your best settings are. Otherwise, because you are working with a converted label that has the adhesive in it, and if you have the settings set too tight or too hot, then you can get the adhesive ooze down in, and it can cause problems. Fortunately, we've had enough experience with that printer and with that product to be able to know what those are, and we would be able to assist with that.
And then the last question I have currently is from Dallas, and he asks, has there been any work done to hash the data on the tag to prevent the data from being mimicked or stolen?
Okay, well, that would primarily be on the software side, which is not something that we typically get into. However, what we always tell people when they have that concern, which is a valid concern, is that just because one of the benefits of RFID is the amount of information that you can store on a tag, doesn't mean that you should use all of that storage space out there. What you can do is what we call and this is kind of ironic since we're talking about vehicles, is that you can use a license plate approach, which basically is that you assign a specific number to the tag, and that thereby, let's say, the car, and then you associate that number on the back end in the software, which contains all of the information. Now, what you can also do with the RFID tag is that you can lock it, and you can have a password to that tag, and only the people who have the correct authority, or I can't think of the right word, would have the password to be able to unlock it or to be able to get access to it. Another thing that you could do is, and I was going to get into this a little bit later, is that you could have a lot of integrators, or a lot of integrators who have developed their own systems use proprietary program, which doesn't mean anything to anybody except for them. That's a way for them to be able to have their customers only be able to get tags or service from them. And so it's a way for them to be able to protect themselves. So those are just a few ways that they can do that. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yep, and Michael also just had a note here. He said, a lot of times the electronic security of the tag, kind of like you were saying, Julia, goes hand in hand with the RFID reader. It's typically done on the systems level, kind of like what you're alluding to. So, yep. So those are all the questions I have for now.
Which is definitely another added value of an integrator.
Yep.
Because we would program in exactly what the integrator would tell us to.
So, yep. Go ahead.
Me? Austin, me?
Yep.
Okay,
that's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Those are good questions. I like to answer those questions. Okay, so speaking of questions, some additional questions that we would either walk you through or people should be asking themselves when looking at proper tag selection is chemical exposure, you know, and yeah, obviously tags that are on a car are not going to be exposed to the same type of chemicals or things that something in a manufacturing plant is going to be exposed to. However, it's still good to be able to identify those. There's still, you know, if you're looking at a tag that is going to, for a car wash, for example, it's going to need to withstand the chemicals that are being used in that process. And then I talked a lot about outdoor exposure because just that is really, really important. One of the things that we really like around here about the tags that we get that are to go on cars are all of the really cool logos and all of the really cool graphics that we see. And because typically, you know, if we're doing an asset tracking application, usually those aren't as you know, aesthetically pleasing as some of the ones that go on you know, for vehicle tracking or access control. So you want to make sure that if you have that nice of a logo or that nice of a graphic, that it's going to look nice, you know, in a few months from now. So you need to know, we need to know where you're at, first of all, because obviously something that's going to be, let's say, in Iowa versus something that is going to be in Arizona has a little bit of sun difference than, you know, between the two states. And then also, how long do you need it to last? If you're looking at something that you only need to last a month versus 6 months, then you might look at something a little bit different. But for example, we would not recommend any destructible tags to go outside the car. To be an external mount. We would want them to be internal mount because it's protected by the glass. And then we would also, if it is an external mount, we would want that to be polyester, not a destructible or polypropylene. Temperature. That's something else, you know, just the, you know, what we have found is, again, you're talking about a car, which definitely does get hot, but your temperatures are going to be a little bit different in, let's say, an asset tracking application in a manufacturing plant where temperatures could get, you know, over 200 degrees. And I'm not saying that in the heat of the summer that windshields are not going to get that hot, so they could. The thing that you have to remember is the operating temperature, which is your reading versus surviving conditions. So if it does get that hot, so it might not read at that temperature, but it will survive, and you just have to wait until it cools back down. So those are just a couple of things to take into consideration.
Julia,
and then,
before we move on, I got a couple more questions, which is great.
Okay.
Patrick writes in, we were talking about, you know, kind of like the encoding of the numbers. He asks, can you have both the license number and like a VIN number information on the RFID tag for identification?
I'm not sure how long the VIN number is, but assuming that it would fit, you would be able to. I just don't know that I would recommend that.
Okay. And then
and it would depend upon the tag that you use, because you could have a tag with just the normal memory, or you could use a tag that has a chip that has extended memory.
Yeah, because what, like the memory would kind of determine how much, you know, you could actually store. So that would be a consideration there, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Then we had another question from Steven saying, he joined a little bit late. You didn't miss it, Steven, but he was asking, you know, just, you know, for, you know, those outdoor exposures and those type of things, you know, is there a warranty for tags that we offer for the tags that are applied to a vehicle?
In terms of the RFID itself, or in terms of the printing? Because we would take that on a case-by-case basis. It's going to be up to that's why we take the qualification so important. And the heat or the outdoor conditions, it's not going to impact the readability of the RFID tag.
Yeah,
it's just that if you select the wrong tag, you could wind up with a tag that doesn't have anything on it in terms of printing.
Yeah, and Stephen just wrote back and he said, both. So both in terms of the RFID tag and also, basically the construction piece. So.
Yeah, well, again, we would take that on a case-by-case basis. And I would say that it would be up to Metalcraft to ensure that we properly qualified the tag. We wouldn't want to put anything in an environment where basically we know that it's not going to last.
Yep. Then Michael also had another note, just from the standpoint of, he was referring back to Patrick's question about the license number and the VIN number, just as a reminder, like the tag programming for RFID, is hexadecimal, 0 through 9 and, A through F, for encoding. So just as an FYI, when you're thinking about what you're going to encode in that types of information.
Agreed. However, you can do conversions.
Correct. Yep. And then Stephen asked an additional question, do our products have any certifications for tolling applications?
That is something that we don't have a lot of experience with, just because, typically we just haven't really gotten involved with too many of that, but we are starting to get more interest in that area. So I'm going to say stay tuned.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead for right now. I think that's the last one I have at the moment.
Okay, thanks. So we'll just talk about some common pitfalls and gotchas. I've talked about this a little bit already, is just the tag selection too late in the process. We understand that, obviously you're thinking about more of what people would consider the big dollar items in terms of the hardware and the software. However, remembering that the tag is what kind of links it all together. You don't want to wait too late in the process and then find out that, that you either can't find what is going to work for you, or that it just doesn't make sense from an ROI perspective. Speaking of which, unrealistic expectations for ROI, which is one of the reasons that I had that as part of our DART process, is just what is your expected ROI? Because sometimes people want to jump right into RFID. We actually have quite a few people that use barcode for access control and vehicle tracking applications. And that's great, if they don't feel comfortable jumping right to RFID. I'd say we have more on the RFID side just because they have been able to make a case for it. But people need to understand what they're willing to invest and what they expect to get out of it and when. Testing conditions in the lab versus real life. And this is something that when I went out to our territory specialists and asked, okay, what do you see as, pitfalls and gotchas? This was something that was definitely recommended. I put in here because although I feel that our R&D department does a very good job with this, we can only test as much as we can here. That's why we offer our samples free of charge, because we want you to be able to test our products in the actual environment in which they're going to be used. And a good example relating it to RFID for vehicles is that we test, on glass windshields, but we know that there are different kinds of windshields out there. And when we first started getting involved with more and more involved with RFID for vehicles, there's metallic content in some of the windshields out there, or at least that's what we ran into. So that's why we highly, highly encourage, testing done in real life conditions for the application. I think of that, I've kind of woven this throughout the presentation, that the value of an integrator. And, you know, we really, really have a good relationship with with many of our integrators, because we do see the value that they provide. So again, another pitfall would be not using an integrator when one really should be. And you know, we have, like I said, we have such a good relationship with so many of our integrators that if we would be happy to facilitate the connection with integrators in an appropriate field if you would like. Understanding the difference in readers. That was something that another rep highly recommended, just because, you know, it does make a difference. Again, we do a number of different tests here. We do our anechoic chamber testing, which is theoretical read range. And then we also have a few fixed readers and handheld readers, but they're not all the same. I mean, so it's just important to understand the differences. And if you have a specific model that you either already have or plan to get, you know, it would just be important for you to test that. Yeah, and then the reader angle, that was something that I included here because of the side view mirror. That's an example of a gotcha where, you know, if you're setting a system up where you're using the side view mirror tag, well, that's the type of tag where it's you get your best read range if you're reading from the bottom up, you know, versus the top down, or if you have it on the side. So just really understanding the entire system there. And then programming schemes. We've already talked about this a little bit, but as a way to be able to protect yourself. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate this, is that we see a lot of proprietary programming from our access control partners, which means that, you know, it's their individuals, their special programming, and we wouldn't be able to replicate it. That's something that they provide to us. So what we get there is that we will get end users that try to come to us. And when we see what type of tag that they have, we know that it has come from one of our partners, and we will then turn around and tell them that, hey, this is one of our partners, you need to go back to them and order your tags. It's a way for our integrators to be able to protect themselves, and it's a way for them to be able to protect the end user by securing that data.
Julia,
yes.
before we move on, we just got a couple more questions. First, could you just give a quick explanation, just so we can all be on the same page, the difference between like a fixed reader versus like a mobile reader? What do you mean by that?
Okay, sure. So if you, a handheld reader, if you think of like a barcode scanner, you know, if you think of what that looks like, it's like a handheld, like almost looks like a gun, you know, that would be a handheld portable reader for RFID. And then a fixed reader is something that is just that. You either have it, you can either have a portal reader, which would basically be like if you were in a, well, if you were in a manufacturing facility and they installed it in a dock door, you know, so when you go through it, it's set and it reads it as you move through it. Very similar to, well, the picture that I've got up here on the in my presentation is that of a gated community. So that's a fixed reader, you know, and they've got it so that when you go through the gate, it would actually pick up and read your RFID tag. So with both of those kinds of readers, how a passive tag works is that basically the passive tag is kind of shut off until it comes within range of a reader. And then the reader is sending out, assuming that the reader is on, sends out the signal to wake up this tag and then read it. So I don't know, hopefully that explained it. The handhelds are used when you're mobile and you're moving around, and a lot of times they're used in conjunction with fixed readers.
Yeah, and Michael was just giving some additional information on some access control he was saying like fixed readers, have no built-in antenna, and integrated readers have a built-in antenna. And so the majority of readers in access control and parking applications are more integrated readers. So that's a good piece of information to know. Another question that came up was from David. Does tag /RFID selection determine the memory, or does the amount of information stored in the tag, kind of determine the what type of chip you're going to select?
I would say that the amount of information that you want to have would be a factor in tag selection. And I don't think that it should necessarily be the determining factor. I think it should be one of the factors.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for now. Go ahead, Julia.
Okay. Well, the last few things that I wanted to share was just, I've talked about these types of applications kind of in not necessarily theory, but more in the abstract. So now I kind of wanted to give some examples that we actually worked with and just kind of share how they came to be and what the results are. So the first one is, as you can kind of see, an access control case study in a gated community. So the end user was actually a real estate developer, and they went through a systems integrator, and the systems integrator was actually our customer. So we worked with the systems integrator who worked with the real estate developer. So their objective was that they wanted to control vehicle traffic into a gated area. And their solution was that the systems integrator actually provided the complete RFID system using customized a combination of windshield tags and rear view mirror hang tags from Metalcraft. And this particular systems integrator has absolutely gorgeous graphics that they use. Just a side note. So the result was, this was a more cost-effective means to maintain security. They no longer, this is not the actual picture of the application. This is just an idea. This is actually a stock image just to be able to give the idea. But it was a more cost-effective means to maintain security. So they no longer needed to have an actual person man the gate the entire time. They were able to improve the traffic flow at peak gate hours. This was actually in a very urban community. And then the other very important thing here is they were able to automate the data capture and have more accurate reporting. So they knew who was coming in and out of the community at all times. And we're able to make the residents of the community feel safer. So that is the gated community access control case study. The next one is a car wash. So with the car wash, we're talking access control here again. Access control actually, and then vehicle identification. In this particular case, the end user developed their own system to use. His objective was to create a loyalty system for his customers. The solution was a software development of his own software. This was highly unusual that an end user was able to do this themselves, and is actually no longer doing this himself. But the solution at the time was to develop his own software system utilizing Metalcraft's RFID windshield tags. And the result was a very positive ROI for the customer, a great advertising tool, because you think that you've got the external facing view and you've got the car wash's logo right there. And like we said, we've seen some really, really neat car wash logos. And then the perceived value for the end user, because what they were doing is that they sell the unlimited car wash subscriptions, and then then the person who has purchased them uses it, but do they use it as much as they think that they're going to use it? That's kind of the question. And some people probably do, some people probably don't. But obviously, if that system works, it's going to be a very positive ROI for the customer, our customer. Then the last one is the vehicle tracking inventory case study. This one was for a car rental company, and we worked with the reseller on this application. The objective was to be able to track their inventory and then create a smoother overall transaction for the end user. Essentially, what they were doing was that they were replacing their barcode system with an RFID system. So they installed fixed RFID readers, and they used that in conjunction with the check-in and check-out process. And then just the result is a quicker and better overall customer experience. Again, they did already have a system in place, but they went from barcode to RFID. So again, typically when you are checking out a rental car, they usually have the barcode scanner there with you, and they scan that in, and the person has to have that with them. In this case, they don't. They know exactly where it's at, and it's just a better overall experience for the customer. So those are just 3 of the examples that we have. We have a lot more because, I jotted this note down too as I was preparing for this. From a quantity perspective, vehicle tracking and access control for cars is the highest quantity of tags that we do per year. It's not the highest by revenue, but it is the highest by quantity. So we just see this as a great opportunity for RFID, and we love doing it just because it's really been in our wheelhouse since for well over 10 years now, and it's just a great application that we can see continuing to grow. So with that, I know that you guys have been asking questions throughout, and I appreciate that, but I'll go ahead and take any other questions. Otherwise, here's my name again. And if you have any other questions that you wanted to ask offline, or if you think of any other questions, here's my contact information. It's the best way to be able to reach me. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, and we are running just a little bit long. So if like Julia said, if you have questions, her information is on the screen. You guys have been great with all the interaction. We really appreciate it. We hope that you have enjoyed the webinar. But if there is anything else that you need, feel free to reach out to Julia or myself. I'm Austin Elling, austine@idplate.com. Feel free to reach out, and we'll try to do whatever we can to answer your additional questions. With that, I guess, Julia, do you have anything else?
No, just this was great. I loved all the interaction. I could talk about this stuff forever, but I really enjoy answering the questions. Sorry, I've been talking too long.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. We are going to go ahead and sign off. So hope everyone has a great afternoon, and join us for our future webinars as well. So thank you very much.